The Segway of today might not hold a significant position in terms of technological esteem. In fact, it's possible that you rarely consider it. Maybe you'll only encounter it when using one for a guided city tour or observing a police officer or security guard patrolling on it. Its relevance seems to have transformed into more of a novelty. This context makes it quite astonishing to realize that the Segway was once among the most eagerly awaited product launches in history. Prepare for an exciting adventure as we dive into the fascinating story of the Segway. Back in the early 2000s, it was the subject of widespread conversation, with many believing it could revolutionize the realm of transportation. Although some of the excitement originated from online conjecture and blog posts, a substantial portion came from notable and respected figures, such as the Segway's inventor, Dean Kamen. If you're not acquainted with him, he could be described as an unconventional and brilliant millionaire. He's recognized for his distinct style, which includes denim attire and helicopter travel, and he even owns an island. Going back to his college years in the 1970s, Kamen developed a small infusion pump that enabled precise and steady administration of drugs to patients. He started a company with that invention called AutoSyringe. He sold it when he was in his early 30s and got a lot of money for it. Then he used that money to begin a company that makes new devices for medicine. Some of these things were really helpful, like a small machine to clean the blood and a bendy tube for the heart. These things made life better and helped people live longer. In 1990, he saw someone in a wheelchair struggling to go up a curb. This gave him an idea to make a super smart wheelchair called iBot. It had 6 wheels, a motor, and could even stand up and go upstairs. While they were making this, they found out they could use some of the smart stuff from the wheelchair to make a new vehicle, which later became the Segway. Dean Kamen, the guy who did all this, believed so much in the Segway. He spent a lot of time and money on it. He even said things like the Segway would change how we walk or how cars became horses. He thought people all around the world would use it to move in cities. But it's sad that the Segway didn't become as popular as he hoped. It's been around for more than 20 years, but most people have never ridden one. I bet most of you watching this have never been on one, and I'm pretty sure most of you haven't bought one either. Considering they've only managed to sell around 140,000 units altogether, and they stopped making them in 2020, I can confidently say this is one of the biggest failures for a product ever. So in this video, I want to talk about why it failed so badly. I've got a list of the top 5 reasons, and I'll start with the first, the big expectations. At the beginning, Dean Kamen, who was already known for inventing things, spoke very highly of the Segway. But it wasn't just him. Other important people in the technology world were also saying it was going to be amazing. Jeff Bezos called it one of the most anticipated product launches ever, and even Steve Jobs said it could become as important as the personal computer. Imagine if that came true. The world would be very different. A famous investor named John Deere, who was good at predicting successful things, believed the Segway would make $1 billion in sales faster than any other product in history. There was even a South Park episode in 2001 that made fun of the hype around the Segway. People were hearing these kinds of things before they even knew exactly what the Segway was. Because the project was so secret, people were guessing it could be something like a teleportation device. When it was finally announced in December 2001 on Good Morning America, it couldn't live up to all those high hopes. It was a neat invention made with a lot of advanced technology, but it didn't seem that amazing because it couldn't match the unrealistic ideas people had. Now let's talk about the second reason for the Segway's failure, the marketing. Dean Kamen and his team were really good at inventing stuff, especially medical devices. For more than 10 years before the Segway, his company was working on and creating all sorts of medical devices. But they usually partnered with other companies to actually make and sell those inventions. For instance, the iBot wheelchair was made by Kamen's company, but sold by Johnson & Johnson. But with the Segway, they made a whole new company just for it, and this company handled making and selling the Segways too. I think this really shows how much he believed in the product, but he didn't even hire a team to sell it outside. I really have to wonder if that was a good choice. I don't want to keep talking about Steve Jobs too much. I know he can be a controversial topic, but he was one of the few people who got to see the Segway before it was shown to everyone. I hope you'll agree that he knows a lot about selling technology and products. He advised them to start with just one type of Segway to keep things easy and clear for customers. This was a big part of how he changed things at Apple in the 1990s, but the Segway company chose to start with 2 different models instead. Jobs said that the way the Segway looked was quite normal and didn't show the amazing technology inside. However, they decided to keep that regular design when they revealed it, and they didn't change it much later on. Jobs also told them to have a huge launch to make a big fuss about it, but the Segway company went for a slow and careful approach. After it was announced on Good Morning America, only big companies could try it out first, like the police and Disneyland. hoping they'd buy a lot of Segways. But that didn't really happen the way they wanted. The regular people like you and me couldn't buy a Segway until almost a whole year after the announcement. By that time, a lot of the excitement had gone down. Another reason why the Segway didn't work well is that in most cases, it's not practical. You can't even use it legally on the sidewalk in many places, which has been a big problem they struggled with. Segway spent a lot of money trying to change these rules in different states and cities, but some people said it's not safe. Apart from having trouble finding a place to ride it, the Segway itself wasn't very practical. It was heavy and could only go about 12 miles before needing a charge. You needed both hands to ride it, so it was hard to do anything else at the same time. Riding a simple bicycle is much easier without these problems. And you know what else? A bicycle usually doesn't cost $5,000. Yeah, a Segway was really expensive. And I'm not the only one who thinks that. The person who used to be in charge of marketing at Segway said the price was way too high. The person who used to be the CEO also said lots of people thought our stuff cost too much. And you know what? They were right. Do you know why? They needed a lot of money to run the company. It turns out that the battery they needed and how they made it in New Hampshire, instead of in another country where it's cheaper, made it really expensive to make. That's why it was hard for them to make a profit if they sold it for any cheaper. Also, think about this. Before they showed it to everyone, Segway was thought to be worth $650 million. But Dean Kamen, the person who made Segway, only wanted to sell about 15% of the company to get money. So there was always a money problem happening, even though they were trying to raise money. Here's another reason why Segway didn't do well. There were many accidents. Just like many ways to move around, it takes some practice to get good at riding a Segway. You need to lean in different directions to make it go where you want. Since it's a new kind of technology, people can find it hard to use. But there were so many well-known accidents with Segways that they got a bad reputation. In 2003, only 7 months after they started selling it to everyone, the President of the United States, George W. Bush, was riding a Segway in Maine and he fell off it. In 2010, Ellen DeGeneres also fell off one while she was showing how to use it on her talk show stage. And in 2015, a person using a Segway ran into Usain Bolt during a victory lap. And there's something else to think about. There were 2 times when they had to recall Segways because the system inside them wasn't working right and people were falling off. But the worst accident, in my opinion, happened in 2010. You see, by 2009, Dean Kamen was trying to sell the company. I guess he realized that Segways wouldn't become very popular, so he wanted to focus on other things. They had worked with General Motors, GM, to make some unique cars, and it seemed like GM might buy the Segway company. But then GM had money problems and couldn't do it because they had to go through bankruptcy. Finally, a rich guy from Britain named James Heselden bought the company. He had a company that made barriers for military bases a long time ago. Some thought he might use Segway tech for the military. But here's where it gets strange. Since it was against the rules to ride Segways on sidewalks in the UK, he used to ride it around his own land. One day he lost control and rode it off a cliff and he died. It might sound like a funny story, but it was a really sad and real event. The person who owned Segway died while riding one, which makes you think maybe a Segway isn't very safe to use. The last reason why Segway didn't work well is that it turned into a joke. What's the first thing you think of when you hear Segway? It's probably not the best thought. For me, I instantly think of Paul Blart, Mall Cop. I doubt that's the image Dean Kamen wanted. He spent years making the technology, and he didn't want people to call it a scooter. But now it's become a symbol of someone not looking cool while using it. On the show, Arrested Development, a character named Job rode a Segway, which fed into the idea that people who use them are lazy and rich. Weird Al even used one in a music video for the song White and Nerdy. These popular media portrayals turned Segways from a revolutionary way to travel into a silly joke. To wrap things up, a Segway was sold in 2013, and then it was sold again in 2015 to a company from China called Ninebot. They seemed to be interested in it mainly because Segway had many patents. This would help them enter the US markets. But in 2020, they said they would stop making the famous Segway device. Instead, they want to make other things that they believe are cheaper to make and more modern. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Business Central. We hope you enjoyed delving into the fascinating world of business with us. Remember, the journey doesn't end here. Stay connected with us, like, comment, subscribe to our channel, and click that notification bell so you won't miss a video. Stay inspired, stay informed, and keep making waves in the world of business. See you in the next one.